Good day, Africa. My name is ZoeBaraka, and we are here with the AfriWomen Network. Today we're going on a journey to just find out where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. Because that is what we do in Africa. We always go back in order to be able to go forward. And AfriWomen in the last year or so has rebranded and strategized to become a better entity in the space of the African development world, in the space of sisterhood, in the space of the diaspora. And today we just wanted to talk about the founding mothers. You always hear people talk about founding fathers of different stages and different movements and systematic entities. This particular development world, we are here to talk about the founding mothers of AfriWomen Network. We've come from far and the journey has been long and we're just getting started. So I'm sitting here with one of Africa's biggest strategic development consultants, Mrs. Abigail Burgesson. We're going to talk about her role in AfriWomen Network, how we began. She's been there from the beginning. She's been on the board. She has helped with communication. She's helped with strategy. And we just thought, you know what? Let's get her story. And so Mrs. Abigail Burgesson, by the way, I'll be calling her Auntie Abby from time to time. Don't panic. That's what we do in Africa. Every person you respect is an auntie or an uncle. So if you hear me talk to her and say Auntie Abby, it's a sign of love and respect. But for those of us who definitely need to be able to Google her so we can know more about her, I'm sitting here with Mrs. Abigail Burgesson. You're welcome to telling your story.
Thank you very much, Zoe. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about AfriWomen, which I have seen grow. I have seen a group of young, vibrant women take the helm of affairs to give it a new identity, to call it AfriWomen's Network. So yes, my journey leading to this point of...
Let's make it a story time, you know, because obviously you're sitting with a story curator. So we're just going to talk about stories and timelines and, you know, what your specific work has been, your specific journey. So take me back to maybe the first phone call or the first time you ever heard, hey, what if we call this thing AfriWomen Network? You know what I mean? Like, just talk to me.
Well, AfriWomen's Network was born and raised as AWDF USC. When you talk of AWDF, you're talking of the African Women's Development Fund. Okay. This was my former place of work, my former employer. That is the first Pan-African women's grant-making organization in Africa that funded, had a mandate to fund the entire continent and eventually started funding the Middle East as well, with growth and development. And I happened to have joined them in 2001, first as a consultant, and then became full-time staff in 2003 from the formative years. And in that early years, that's when the name AWDF USC was created. This was a sister organization in the USC formed by the founders of the African Women's Development Fund. The three founders, Bisi Adeleye Fayemi from Ghana, Joanna Foster, Bisi Adeleye Fayemi from Nigeria, yes. And Joanna Foster. Of blessed memory, she was Ghanaian, and Dr. Hilda Tadria from Uganda. The three women founded the African Women's Development Fund. And thereafter, AWDF USC was created. This was initially known as the Friends of AWDF. And it was created as a partner or sister organization based in the USC, supported by volunteer sisters who were working in different fields, but who still bought into the vision of the African Women's Development Fund at the time, to help raise funds to give to women's rights organizations across Africa. So AWDF USA remained the sister organization that served as the pass-through in managing the 501c status of the African Women's Development Fund, which allowed...
Talk me through that a little bit. So when you say it was the pass-through, what does that really mean?
Well,
how does that work?
AWDF was registered in the USA, although it was based in Africa. It had a registration in the USA.
Okay.
What was known as the 501c3 status, and which technically, from what I understood, allowed it to raise funds in the USA.
Okay.
But that funding came through, that system actually was managed and supported by AWDF USA, the membership of AWDF, the volunteers there. And it was actually an organization in itself. You had a treasurer, eventually they hired an executive director, then they had the various roles you would play, except that they didn't carry out programs. Once a while, they organized events, and they also supported AWDF in organizing its own fundraising events and other events in the USA.
Okay.
Just for your information, I worked with AWDF for several years, like I mentioned, until 2022. And I was also the liaison managing AWDF USA in terms of communication and actually liaising with them in terms of work and activities. So for the longest time, the partnership with AWDF USA was really good in terms of engagement, but we also did not have a lot of the kind of funding we needed. And
through the US part?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, we had individuals occasionally making grants, giving gifts, and it is the responsibility of AWDF USA at the end of the tax year to actually do the finances for AWDF in Africa. Also acknowledging funders, giving them the necessary documentation to file their taxes and all that. But the interesting thing is most of the people who served were Africans in the diaspora and African Americans who shared the vision of AWDF and wanted to see the organization thrive and women on the continent thrive. So that spirit had kept the organizations going. There were transitions over the period. You know, it's like a board. The Friends of AWDF was technically like a board. After some years, they moved on and a new crop came. I think it is after the second or third transition that we have come to what we have now as the AfriWomen Network. Now, the journey has been a bit checkered in the sense that when talking about our engagement in Ghana or Africa with the partners in the diaspora, we tend to realize later on that, look, it is not just the kind of thing that you would have friends seated there to be raising funds. It's the kind of institution you've put up that really needed staff. But these were all volunteers, you know? And with the latter transition, or the latest transition that took place, it brought on board a group of vibrant young women, led Mamia Fonsai, and those she managed to rally around her. And they actually were very bold in sharing some of the difficulties and challenges which we had been confronted with earlier on. But also bearing in mind that AWDF at the time was also in a period of growth, you know, in Africa, and it really grew well and fast. And so some of these issues were not so much big issues until later on, when with the new crop of leaders of AfriWomen, they pointed out the fact that, look, going out to raise funds always posed a challenge for us because we are working in the shadows of AWDF.
Okay,
we are AWDF USA, and this is
and
AWDF, you know, in Ghana, where I used to work. And so Mami in particular drew my attention to it. I know we've got to really look at changing the name. We also have to look at the programs we would run to put the spotlight on us, because by law also over they are required, it gave them the mandate to carry out programs and activities, not just a pass-through where a donor, there are some donors who would give a grant, but they would want to give a grant, but because they don't fund directly in Africa, they can fund through the 501c3, that is AWDF, which is managed by AWDF USA. And they did the administrative and financial processes and pass it through to Africa.
Okay, so that's why you use the word pass through. Got it.
So
Okay.
I've gone a long, winding journey before I landed by.
But that makes sense, though. You needed to explain all the salient points, or else you don't get the story.
So when they started flagging the issue, that look, anytime we went out, this is it. And I must be honest, some people previously had reached out to us. That look, people come to us asking for a grant because we carry the name AWDF. They don't even see the USA. Because sometimes, like, your brain does that. They'll call me, we've asked this organization. And these are African organizations, burdened African organizations in the US. You see, you know, so that was a challenge. They were not a grant-making organization. They hadn't raised huge pots of money. So they'll direct them to Africa, and for their own programs they needed to raise money.
Exactly.
You know, yet when they step out, they are also, but you are the African Women's Development Fund.
You don't need money.
You know, and it was a real challenge for them. You know, and I also think that our focus on growth and the work we were doing here probably was not also giving us enough opportunity to really tackle these emerging or feeding issues that were setting them back. But we also had the advantage of working closely with them at times. You know, there were meetings that they had to use their various positions and roles in the various things they did in the US to facilitate the work we did. The guests we invited to major convenings in the USA, supporting with on-the-ground logistics. I recall years ago, AWDF organized a Women of Substance exhibition in the UK, and these were exhibitions of photographs taken during the shooting of the documentary of Women of Substance 1. One is actually the first one, which took the organization through about 8 countries, documenting the issues women were working on, African women's rights organizations were working on. And AWDF USA was very, very instrumental in helping that event happen. The emergence of the young and vibrant leadership of AWDF USA, that's the last lot that came in. Realized, no, for us to have grounding, to have an identity, we need to really carve out something for ourselves. And they came up with the name AfriWomen Network.
The AfriWomen Network.
The AfriWomen Network. And identifying the kind of work they do, still maintain, and they didn't do it without the knowledge of AWDF. I'm sure they would have signed things, because by then I was out of AWDF. They had signed the necessary memorandum of understanding and other things to do.
So it is almost as if the AfriWomen's Network, I'm trying to understand the storyline, did come out of the AWDF USA.
Yes.
But now the AfriWomen's Network is independent with its programming and its strategic positioning, but it still holds space with the AWDF.
Yes.
Is it the USA one, because that's now defunct, but now we just the mother, the mother, I don't want to use the word company, organization, there you go, the mother organization AWDF, they still hold space there, but the AfriWomen's Network is independent in and of itself.
Yes.
There we go. Okay, we wanted to definitely...
That is it. And it's actually the evolvement of AWDF USA becoming AfriWomen's Network. It's actually the same thing.
Right.
But I'm sure if you should get a chance to speak to Mania Phone, she'll tell you a bit about the legal registration processes that are allowed there. But they still have that bonding and acknowledgement with AWDF as sister organizations, and they still manage the 501c3 status for AWDF. That means they would transfer grants given to AWDF in the US to AWDF. And I know this by virtue of the fact that my role in AfriWomen, and that's how come I was invited actually to be the strategic advisor, because of some of the things I have done with AWDF and then managing AWDF USA at the time. So it's like bringing me in to help rethink, redesign, and then move on. And I'd really like the vision, the work, the kind of things they have put out, working on a number of issues, and particularly the connection with the continent, because anybody on the continent who hears it wants to
be a part of
be
it.
part of what is
Exactly.
happening in the diaspora, and there are people in the diaspora too who wants that connection, and they've brought a kind of intentionality into the space, you know, making the kind of effort, the kind of things they're doing now. It's amazing how they're keeping their own work and then doing that as volunteers, because it's still in this volunteering stage. Much as they are working at raising funds, and bearing in mind that they officially took the identity in
Just
2024.
about, just a year ago.
So it's just a year.
Yeah.
But I believe they're going to crack the nut.
Yeah.
They would make it.
Yeah.
They are building a cadre of African women in the diaspora and on the continent, and then coming up with, I'm sure that I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but they are coming up with very brilliant programs and activities that eventually would have the buy-in on the continent and anywhere there are African women. So in a nutshell, that's what I can say.
So I want to get your role with the AfriWomen Network now, right? So you're the strategic communications, give me the word.
This is
advisor,
right. Strategic advisor.
And it's based on your work. Yeah. Tell me about your first meeting with, I don't want to say Mami Afon anymore because it's now bigger than that, right? Just any of the young women with the AfriWomen Network, just tell me a story. I just want to know a story. The first time they told you, we want to change the name, what were your thoughts? How excited were you? Or did you think, let's sit, just talk to me?
Great.
Yeah.
You know, you can't talk about AfriWomen Network without talking about Mami Afon.
They're almost like one and the same, but not.
Because it's like talking about the African Women's Development Fund without the founders.
Yes, without
stage of the
BC and
like,
yes.
Yes, so it's the same when Mami would say, Abigail, you've done these sort of things. You've been our main liaison at AWDF. You communicate with this. What do you think? I mean, she kept bouncing ideas
off of you.
Yeah. And then I'd also managed what we called the African Feminist Forum. That brings feminists across Africa together. I mean, coordinates the work of the African Feminist Forum over the years. So it's just like, you know, there are some of the activities that we would work on and build as time goes on. And I would want you to think about the kind of things you did at the with the AFF, that's the African Feminist Forum, as part of it. And then the strategic work of the AfriWomen Network in itself, from it's having its identity, from its theory of change, the mission, its vision, you know, the kind of, the strategic plan. I remember we met around CSW, was it 2023, 2024 or so, to actually delve into the strategic plan.
Tell me, what's CSW?
The Commission on the Status of Women, that happens yearly in New York. You know, where we go and account for what we have done since Beijing. You know, and all that. But it happened, it existed before then. Well, so I was very happy to be part of it. I didn't even think, then I was still working with the African Women's Development Fund when she kept asking. So I was informally doing it before a title was even given to that, you know. And then also see how we can brand it and then position it to access funding.
Right.
Mami, in the usual self, is like, can you please tell us what we do around? It's not a list of questions coming, but ask them when just a phone call to inquire about something. Are you available? We want to have this meeting. Do you think you can join us online? And so it was very key. But one thing I could tell, or I could see, was the vibrancy with which they were bent on doing something. I could feel this more probably in the earlier years. I wasn't so much as I was the liaison between AWDF and AWDF USA, the executive directors or the CEOs were the main people liaising with them. But with this new board, they really came down to work with people who have the hands-on experience to guide. And so yes, it was so simple and easy and very informal. I didn't feel it was anything that was going to cost me time or my consulting time or anything. And I'm always happy to give back to African women who really want to change the narrative about Africans.
Would you say that it's almost as if it's a passing of a baton?
Pardon me?
Would you say it's almost as if it's a passing of the baton? So even though AWDF is very much functioning, I like that you're using the term young and vibrant. Not to say that there are no young and vibrant people. It's just that it feels like a passing of time. And the AfriWomen Network is holding space in a different way, but the same.
I think so.
Would you say that?
Yes,
Why
I think
would
that
you
is
say
it.
that? Yeah.
I think that is exactly how you've put it. The passing on of the baton. At the same time, they're also very, very mindful and intentional about intergenerational relations.
That's the word, yeah.
You know, and that is a good thing. And I must mention one person who has stuck with them. She was with the first, not the first board, or the second. That is Professor Abnabuzia, who was part of, I think she served on the board of the African Women's Development Fund, the first set of
very first.
And then when she finished, she joined AWDF USA because she was a lecturer at Rutgers. And that was long before Mamia Fon's time. So when that period was over, that long period of dormancy and the transitions within AWDF USA, I think she was the one who actually prodded Mami to take
the baton,
the baton and
do a runner.
She has been present, you know, and we talk about going to the old woman for advice in our African culture, and it's always the old woman, not the old man, and she's been the old woman in that space, you know, knowing there's somebody there who can speak for you, who you can seek guidance from, walk into their room at any time. It's a blessing. And she has actually kept that link and that door open. I'm sure if probably AfriWomen had approached others, there are some key great ones like Barbara Phillips, an African-American woman who was also part of it from the beginning, was highly committed. You know, maybe some of them too would be willing to foster that, but Professor Abnabuzia has been excellent. She's walked the talk with them all the time, but primarily because the current leadership, Mamia Fon, and I should also mention Nana Jisuwa Ofusuama, Dr. Ofusuama. She is excellent. I mean, I wonder who is paying them for all the work they're doing. She's left behind in the shadows, but she's an engine in itself, you know. So that intentionality they bring in bridging the gap is very important. Particularly this year when the focus of the conversation has been Beijing plus 30, that you're telling the history of what it was before, what has been achieved, where the gains and the losses, how you strategize going forward.
You know, Auntie Abby, when you talk about Beijing plus 30, right? I have to confess, I had to Google that. Unfortunately, because if you don't work in that space, you hardly ever really know about it. Because most of the young women in this day and age honestly do not know what that was or what that incident was or the catalyst that necessitated all of those incidents that happened. So let me ask you this question. What is that? And I know we're here for the AfriWomen Network. I think it's very important because, again, this year was the plus 30. And I think it's very strategic for the AfriWomen Network because that's almost like a catalyst also for the AfriWomen Network, right?
Yeah.
But think about it this way. The AfriWomen Network and then Beijing, we all know where Beijing is, right? So how do they walk hand in hand? So give us a little history first.
Maybe I'll need to really get into the books to be very specific about some. I don't want to misalign some, but I walked into post-Beijing to find that a number of organizations have been birthed.
Out of that.
Yes, to what happened. In Ghana here, you could talk of the ARC Foundation, which was a women's rights organization that has the shelter for women, was doing a lot of work around women's leadership. You have organizations that had done monitoring visits in Nigeria, Project Alert,
all of that.
And all that. There were a number. I mean, I've lost my line of thinking. And these organizations have all emerged to respond to the needs of women. A lot around work on violence against women, HIV and AIDS, women's economic empowerment and security,
all of that.
Women's education, women's health, reproductive rights, some working around peace and security. Liberia was still a hot cake at the time. Hot cake not because of anything positive, but because of the post-war issues and all that. So organizations have emerged across Africa. That started. Now, most of them responded to issues that were within their reach. When I say I walked in, I came to the life of AWDF, where their focus was to raise money to support these organizations.
Thank you. Now we have some meat. Thank you. Okay. See, now we have finally gotten to the meat of it. Not AWDF, because we're here for the AfriWomen Network. But now do you see the correlation between what happened in Beijing and the fact that AWDF said we need to be able to fund these organizations coming out of the Beijing conference or the women's conference that happened in Beijing. And so AWDF happened. And then suddenly, well, not suddenly, but many, many, many years later, we have the AfriWomen Network that is almost playing both parts. It's not just a conference anymore. It is a conference of women still trying to raise funds for the young and the vibrant. Did I get that right?
Yeah. And AfriWomen, like I mentioned, is very alive in the diaspora, which has always been on the drawing board. But you've seen a lot of women, African women in the diaspora, first generation, second generation, third generation African women who are very desperate to connect to the continent. And AfriWomen is serving as a bridge.
Bridge gapper.
You know, which is interesting. And this year, AfriWomen in New York organized a meeting and had the same conversation, bringing together three of us who were on the periphery of the Beijing conference. I mean, post. But then we have worked in various spaces and capacities that could let the whole lot of very young women you were referring to, some of them are not even 30 years. So they don't, in their 20s actually.
They don't, exactly.
Yeah, so anything being discussed about Beijing, it's
almost
historical,
history to them.
History to them. Which is some of the things we do. We are Africans. You get into the future through the past. Do you understand? You walk backwards to find the rights and the wrongs and the mistakes you shouldn't do, and even learn from those to move forward. So the AfriWomen Network provided that platform to enable the narrative to be shared widely with its members, much as it also fostered that kind of partnership with people doing diverse things on this part, and also emphasizing some of the new and emerging areas that these organizations that started from Beijing, some of them have dealt, of course, their thematic focus areas change with time, but some of the new trends and new issues that women are confronted with, issues of violence against women still persist.
Still a number one.
The issue of mental health,
Yes.
self-care, and all those things. They are another killers.
So a couple of days ago, what I did was I kind of compared the websites, right, between AWDF and the AfriWomen Network, because I wanted to see the correlation. And on the AfriWomen Network, you would see, for example, there was the Diaspora podcast. There's a bunch of storytelling, because this is a dispensation that we find ourselves in now. We have to keep telling the story consistently. We have to package it in a different way. We have to present in an entirely different way than before, than what development for the African woman was before. When you look at the AfriWomen Network now, where do you see us in the future? Just, you know, with the tools of the trade, for example.
Well, just a point of correction. Their website has always carried different things in the past. The AfriWomen Network, or AWDF USA, even showed some of the work AWDF was doing on their website as part of it, because it's to enhance resource mobilization. AfriWomen is very intentional about the programs it's carrying now, and a different style, a different approach, although and responding to the current development trends, just like AWDF would be. I must keep saying that I'm not speaking for AWDF because I don't work for them now.
And we are here for the AfriWomen Network.
Yeah. So AfriWomen arrived at what you're doing, not from any guesswork, but through the conversations they've had, or we have had. Anytime we met with people, young African women who've been part of it, we got the vibe as to what the real issues are. What are the trending things? What are the things that they need to focus on? So that have shaped and informed the direction of the AfriWomen's Network. And it's also great when you approach work from that angle. You make people own it. They identify with it, they own it, they don't feel pushed or addressing something or talking about something that is abstract to them. It is their stories they are telling. And some of the stories that have informed the line of programming now are stories that will shake some people, would inspire others. You'd listen to it and it tells you are not alone, you know. And these are the kind of things we need. And also they are tapping into resources in the diaspora and resources on the continent by fostering that relationship. We have emerging entrepreneurs. Don't forget, some of the key work of AfriWomen too is to facilitate that networking. Major entrepreneurs, emerging, budding, whatever you call them, in diverse ways, doing different things in Africa. There are some in the USA who want to connect. And these are people of African descent, you know, who want to connect with the continent, meet partners, get through to talk to. Somebody called me and said, look, I'm going to Rwanda to do something. Do you know anyone you can recommend, the organizations that I can partner with and all that? These are essential things and important things, particularly when you're talking about work that is focusing on women, women's rights. You need the pointers, the directors, the waymakers, people who can actually tell you,
the waymakers and the gatekeepers.
When you get there, you can reach out to this person or that person, and these are organizations that you can tap into. So
I think that's the crux of the AfriWomen Network. For example, when we had the AfriWomen Hangout just a week or so ago, as I was sitting there, I made a passing comment to somebody else about Rwanda and how, you know, you're looking for certain spaces in Rwanda. And then somebody who was just sitting there overhears it and goes, oh, I know many people in Rwanda. Well, what do you need? And what do you need? Well, there's that in Kigali, and there's that, you know, in Nyarutarama, inside of Kigali. I think that was the epitome of what the AfriWomen Network is. It's a network of women who just help each other, if you really break it down. Did I capture it?
You did. You did. That is an essential part of it, fostering that network on the continent, bridging the gap between different people, the diaspora and the people on the continent, much as we are bridging the gap and the intergenerational gap. So it is a key function of AfriWomen, and with the way the world has gone over the years and where it's still going, we don't live on an island, and we don't know where your next stop would be. So being in such a space is highly valuable, so that you can always connect, even breaking new grounds. I mean, you may not know somebody there, but there's a product you may need to take there, and it is an essential thing for you to be in the right space. And we want women to thrive economically as well, and that requires we spreading our tentacles beyond our countries or where we find ourselves, making forceful links in other places where we touch base. And AfriWomen provides just that right space.
Wow. So, in your wildest imagination, and this would be our last question, in your wildest imagination, and let's say we're 50 years down the line, what is your dream for the AfriWomen Network? What do you hope to have seen that have happened?
I think it should be a household name for every woman on the continent.
In what way?
A problem solver, solution, having resources, even ability to give grants, or partnering with a grant-making organization that can resource women, the work women are doing, entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial work, development work, whatever it is. But AfriWomen should be the place to go when you are lost on the continent, you want to find your direction as to carving a path and to thrive in diverse ways. You should be able to foster that relationship and tell you, okay, in terms of resources, this is it. You should be able to vouch for organizations and women who are doing so well within global and international spaces beyond the continent. Giving itself an identity of its own, not working in the shadows of anything or anybody. Yeah, that is it.
Wow. Well, I do want to take time out to say thank you, first for coming to the interview, but most importantly, for being a founding mother, for being there even without knowing that you were there. I think that's the most important thing, because you were doing the work even before we, you know, you had a title for it. So thank you for being a founding mother. I think that is the beauty of the AfriWomen Network, in that we're able to tap into those that have gone before us, and they don't even know we're tapping, and they don't mind that we're tapping. And just a couple of months ago, or maybe a few months ago, we were in a meeting, and your daughter was in the meeting as well, which is for me a very big thing, because there is you, there is Mami Afon, there's people like me and Dr. Nana and everybody else that's on the ground, Faith and everybody else. And then there's the other generation that's coming right on our heels. And so in a lot of ways, we are beginning to become like you, and your daughter is beginning to become like us. Because to borrow your words, they are now the young and the vibrant. I don't know if you get the correlation, right? I get it. So I do want to take time out to say thank you for being a founding mother, especially to the African women.
Let me share one last thing with you.
Yes.
Talking about my daughter. In one of the AfriWomen's meetings, there was a mother and a daughter, and the daughter is very active, more like a scribe or the tech savvy person. And her mom said she's very happy to have been there, to know where her daughter goes to and the kind of people she hangs out with, in terms of the knowledge she gathered from the meetings and things spoken. And for me, that was touching.
Huge, yeah.
That was touching. I mean, a very direct and intentional way of bridging the gap, bringing them into the space, knowing that, look, we have this knowledge and you have that, and we can work together. But more profoundly, knowing that her daughter has found that kind of space. She was very happy with the space of the AfriWomen Network, all the discussions that happen. I don't think she belongs to the tech world like that, looking at her age, but it was very
powerful.
Powerful for her to share her feeling about the meeting and her happiness about it. So we have the responsibility to hold others' hands and then bring them along.
And thank you for doing that, because you have done that in a lot of ways. And guys, we have come to the very end of, I don't want to call this the first of the series, because we don't know where we're going to go with this, right? But this is the first taping and the first recording, and we'll see you in the next one. We want to keep you curious. Just stay tuned. You don't know who else is coming. The good news is the AfriWomen Network space is filled with incredible women doing fantastic things on the African continent. We are so glad that you're coming on this journey with us, and we're taking you right to the beginning to just talk with the founding mothers of African development and African liberation and African women's liberation. There's so many words that you can use, but the point is the AfriWomen Network is by African women for African women in the diaspora. So welcome to the AfriWomen Network. My name is ZoeBaraka, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.